All right, today we're jumping into something really fascinating. We're going way back to 1742 to a powerful sermon delivered at the University of Oxford. I mean, this thing was designed to literally jolt its audience out of complacency, and the way it's built, well, its power to persuade is just as striking today. So, the entire argument, the whole thing, hangs on this one dramatic line. This isn't just some fancy opening. Nope, it is a command, a diagnosis, and a promise, all rolled into one. It's really the engine that drives everything we're about to explore. Now, I want to be super clear about what we're doing here. This isn't a religious lesson. What we're really interested in is how this argument works. We're going to treat it as a masterclass in persuasion, breaking down the rhetorical techniques used to provoke a deep personal realization, techniques that, you'll see, are absolutely timeless. So how does it do it? Well, the whole thing is structured perfectly, almost like a three-act play. First, you get the diagnosis. It points out a problem you probably don't even realize you have. Then comes the crisis. It makes you feel this urgency, like you have to do something right now. And finally, there's the resolution. It shows you the way out, a path to transformation. Let's dig into each of these acts. Okay, let's get into part one. This is where the sermon lays the groundwork with its powerful central metaphor. This idea that most people are walking around in a kind of deep spiritual sleep, and they have absolutely no idea. So, you might be asking, who exactly is this sleeper? Well, the sermon's argument is kind of surprising. It's not necessarily, a quote-unquote bad person. It's anyone living in this state of profound self-ignorance. Someone who's just going about their life totally convinced they're fine, while in the sermon's terms, they're actually spiritually dead. And this is where it gets really clever. The sermon sets up this huge, jarring contrast. Look at this. On one side, you've got the sleeper's cozy self-perception, perfectly healthy, totally free, at peace. But on the other side, a really terrifying diagnosis. They're diseased, they're trapped, they're possessed. The persuasive genius here is forcing you, the listener, to see that massive gap and ask, wait a minute, which one am I? But here is the real twist, the most provocative part of the whole argument. The sermon claims that the deepest sleep isn't found in people who are obviously doing bad things. No, it's found in the conventionally good religious person. The one who checks all the boxes, has orthodox beliefs, and thinks they're doing great. But inside, there's no real, living, spiritual core. And to hammer this point home, it uses this incredibly vivid image, the painted sepulcher, which is basically a decorated tomb. It looks beautiful and clean on the outside, right? But what's inside? Dead men's bones. It's a brutal metaphor for a religious life that is all about appearances, with no real substance or life inside. Okay, so after painting that pretty grim picture, the sermon just completely shifts gears. The tone gets sharp, it gets urgent. This is the crisis moment. We're moving from describing the problem to a direct, personal, and intense call to action. You can feel the change immediately. The speaker isn't just talking about a sleeper anymore, they're talking directly to you, the sleeper. Notice the shift to direct commands. Arise, call. The whole point is to shatter that comfortable, passive listening and demand your full attention right now. And then, bam, it hits you with this rapid-fire series of questions. It's like an interrogation designed to force you to look in the mirror. And it starts with the biggest question of all. Are you truly ready for what comes next? For death and judgment? And it doesn't stop there. The questions just keep probing deeper, getting past your behavior and into the very core of who you are. Has your true nature been restored? Have you recovered that image of God, that real holiness? See, this isn't about a checklist anymore. The sermon isn't just asking if you believe, it's asking if you love with every single part of your being, your heart, your soul, your strength. That's a way, way higher standard, and it's intensely personal. The whole thing builds to this final, pointed question that just leaves no wiggle room. You can't just nod along. You have to answer it for yourself. This entire sequence is a powerful rhetorical tool, built to tear down any self-deception and create an internal crisis that just screams out for a resolution. So after building up all that tension, creating that personal crisis, the sermon does something crucial. It doesn't just leave you there in despair. The final act pivots completely, moving from darkness into light, from crisis into hope. It offers this incredible promise for anyone who actually listens to that call to awake. And this right here, this is the payoff. After the scary diagnosis and the intense questioning, you get the resolution, the promise of light. And that light symbolizes everything the sleeper lacks: grace, understanding, divine glory. It's a total reversal of the darkness we heard about before.
And what's really important is that it's not just some vague hope. The sermon lays out a clear step-by-step path. It's a process. First, you have to actually hear the call. Then you have to act on it to arise from the dead. Only then can you receive the light, and that's what ultimately transforms you into what it calls a temple of the living God.
So let's step back for a second. Why are we talking about a sermon that's almost 300 years old? Well, because if you strip away the specific 18th century context, what you're left with is this timeless blueprint for how to build an argument that genuinely moves people to change. I mean, just think about the techniques. It's built around one powerful, easy-to-understand metaphor: sleep versus awake. It follows that classic three-act structure we talked about: problem, crisis, resolution. It grabs you and forces you to engage with these direct personal questions. And it deals with these huge, universal themes that are just as relevant today as they were back then. And that kind of leads us with one final thought to chew on. This sermon was a call to wake up from a kind of spiritual numbness. But it really makes you think. In our world today, an age of constant distraction, endless scrolling, and nonstop noise, what kind of sleep might we be in? And what would it even mean for us to truly be awake?